Mhm. All right. Welcome, everyone. It's nice turnout today. Thank you. Fremont Art Association would like to welcome guest artist Julia Cline, who lives in the Bay Area.
Hi.
Julia has been painting since she was 10 years old and started exploring Yupo about 20 years ago. She says, "I am a writer who likes to paint. I experiment always." And everything around her seems to inspire her writing and her visual art. In addition to painting in pastel and watercolor, she has written and illustrated 3 children's books. Her demo today is exploration of watercolor on Yupo, a synthetic paper. Julia will show us how to use this unusual non-porous paper to make spectacular art. Welcome, Julia.
Okay, well, we'll see if it's spectacular or not tonight or this afternoon. Okay, it's nice to see you all. I'm going to demo through the my iPad, which is over my head. So I'm going to put this aside, and you're going to watch the thing over my head. All right. So Yupo paper is basically a plastic paper, and there are 2 kinds. There's opaque, it's just a white paper paper. It's not, I'm going to say paper, it's not paper, it's plastic, but you can't see through it. It's basically white, opaque. Then there's this has splatter on it, but it's you can see through it. All right, it's translucent. And let me show you how this works. I've got this it's actually a FedEx box with 2 different pieces of colored paper on it. If you put the translucent on it, you can see through. As you can see here, there's a purple sheet under here and a yellow sheet under here. I have a friend who paints frogs. She'll paint a water line here and the top of the frog, and then she'll underneath the Yupo paper, she'll cut out its body so you can see its legs underneath the water. So its head is up above the water and its legs hang down. So with translucent Yupo, you can do a lot of different things because you can put different colors underneath it. I don't do so much that with translucent. I use it in another way, and hopefully we'll get to that. I have several different things to show you this afternoon, and I don't know whether we'll get to that last one or not. I'm keeping an eye on the clock. But translucent and opaque are the 2 different kinds.
On the
yes,
translucent,
What?
instead of putting colors under, can you paint on both sides?
You can paint on both sides of Yupo, yes. It does pick up the oil from your hands. It picks up the oil from cat paw prints. As I put my brand new Yupo paper, and I find I'm not the first person who touched it. My cats have touched it first. I'll put paint on it, and these little holes will show up, and I'll realize they're the shape of my cat. It's usually my cat Pluff who has walked across it. Her little feet are on there. But you can remove that oil with a little soapy water. Just make sure you get the soap off so it doesn't get into your watercolor. It's retrievable. So, any other questions about kinds of Yupo paper? All right. These are the products I'm going to use. This is Colorations liquid watercolor. And these 2 bottles, I have 2 bottles in here just to keep them from rolling around. This is washable liquid handy art watercolor. And I use Cline matte clear sealer on the Yupo paper to either seal the finished painting, or I'll show you how I use it to layer the paint later. And then I use Daniel Smith watercolors. I just like them best. You can use any kind of watercolor. I also use Winsor Newton sometimes when I'm out of Daniel Smith, or they're out of the color where I'm purchasing the stuff. I get my, usually I get my liquid watercolor from Lakeshore Learning Center on Bascom Avenue, but they quit having the colorations there, which I like better than the handy art. So sometimes I order it online. Any questions about materials? Okay. Now, when I'm doing these things, it seems like maybe I'm just going to throw paint on the paper, but I do have in mind basic design and value, always in mind. So think about sweet spots. I know you all heard this ad nauseum probably because you're experienced artists, but the division of the piece of paper you're working on into thirds horizontally and vertically, so that you end up with these sweet spots where you put your centers of interest. So I think about that while I'm looking at these abstract things I'm doing. I'm not just throwing color on paper. I also think about basic designs. Sorry, I'm thinking about like an aerobics instructor does, where you do things backwards instead of straight up. You know, the basic S or X, or the masses or L's. The basic designs that help people follow the basic composition, places for the eye to rest, places to put your centers of interest and stuff like that. I don't always know what design I'm going to use, but when I'm looking at what's there, sometimes I pick out different designs, because on Yupo, you're not as much in control of the watercolor. So you have to sometimes choose what's happened, choose from what's happened instead of controlling the watercolor to make it do what you want it to do. And that's scary for some people. So I suggest pretend you're 9 or 7 or 8 or something when you start to do this. And often, I think, as you all know, value, the lights and darks drive your design, because it's the pattern of lights and darks that draw the eye through the painting and determine whether the real design is an S or an L or an X. All right, so the first thing I'm going to demonstrate is using found objects to create patterns on the Yupo paper. Okay, so what I want to do first is to get some paint on my paper. I'm going to mist it a little first, not too much, because remember, the water is not going to soak in. This is plastic. Everything that I put on here is going to sit on top of this plastic surface. It's not going to soak in. So none of it is going to disappear into the paper. All of it's going to sit on top, and I can get a mighty puddle here. So puddling is one of the things that can happen with this kind of method, right? So I'm going to put a little violet on the paper. I'm using these little spray bottles. They used to have hand sanitizer in them. I happened upon a sale at Raft, and they had a lot of them, and I was so happy because getting the spray bottles, I used to use the spray bottles I got from my optometrist, but then I had my eyes, my cataracts done, and I don't go there anymore, and so I can't get those bottles anymore. So my whole source was out, was eliminated. Use a little yellow. Depending on how much water I put on the paper, depending on whether I blow dry it or I let it soak, that'll depend on whether these things mix or don't, right? So let's see what else. I want to get I don't know, probably I'm going to put some orange in here. Right now, I've just put color all over, all 3 colors all over the paper. Now I'm going to pick some things. Let me show you a box of, here's a box of some things that I have used. You can find round things all the time. You can work with circles all the time. Here's a cotter pen, a lamp harp. This is the inside of a water bottle, defunct water bottle. So it's got shapes inside of a circle. Big old washer that's a square with a circle inside of it. Keys are interesting. I have some of my father's old tools. One of the best ones I ever did was, I was very frustrated with a commission I was working on, and I through my father's old saw, an antique saw, and a whole bunch of his tools on the paper and let it dry, and it came out in this very interesting pattern. It was great. This is the bottom of a hiking pole. When you want to walk on snow, you put this on the bottom of the hiking pole so it won't go through the snow. It's going to be a circle of dots because it's got a jagged edge on it. I put it on here. Got a lot of, this is one of those things that like a pair of socks came on hanging from the, and then I have all these S hooks that I've been wanting to use. I don't know why, I just want to, I'm going to throw them on here because I just think it'd be interesting to have a whole trail of S's in here. Right now, I'm just playing to show you how. Haven't really thought about my design yet, which I might ought to be thinking about it a little more than I am. But I also have this. I want to repeat some of these curves. Motif is kind of important too. I'm having trouble picking things up off my table here. Here's some more curves here. Here's going to be another circle of dots because it's a ball bearing I took out of, I think it was out of an exercise machine. And then sometimes it's just kind of interesting to have lines. It might radiate out in different directions. Let's get this line to radiate bent. This one to radiate bent. Now I think that's all I'm going to do for now. And I want to build up some color around some of these things. So maybe I'll build up orange around here. Okay. Maybe I'll build up some yellow down here. And now I've got sort of a uniform value in here. So I want to add some darks to give it some depth. Here's some of that violet. Now I could also, I want to show how alcohol works on UPO. So how it chases the color out in a way. Now, if I spray alcohol on it, it's a completely different look. The alcohol that I just dropped on there is 70% alcohol, so it really chases the stuff away. This alcohol that I'm spraying on here is only about 30% alcohol. And what it'll do is spread everything out. And then as things dry, it'll make a very soft, hazy look rather than a textured, spotty, speckled one, because things will slowly melt together and it'll look very, very soft in those areas. Okay, I'm going to set this aside for now because I don't know what it's going to do and I just want to see. Right. But this is sort of in a super sweet spot. So it'll be a center of interest. What you didn't see was that as I set that down, the radiating lines that I put around there, they're the things that hang down from a wind chime, and so they're round and they rolled the paint around. So I don't know whether that'll stay as it dries or it will settle out. This painting is a combination of what I'm going to do and what I just did. It's a little hard for you to see, so let me make sure I get both techniques in. If it weren't framed, it'd be easier for me to show. All right, this is actually this has been painted on from my palette. It's not sprayed. Well, some of it's sprayed, but these are pieces of cut up plastic credit cards and other cards that are expired that I cut up and used to make these shapes. I just laid them on the paint as I laid those things. And then when the paint dried, I picked them up and it made these nice little shapes of this path. This is string that I laid on and took off. So it made this nice kind of trunks of these trees. This is cat litter. When I did that picture that I was talking about, when I was tired from that commission I was doing, I did that in the garage. It was a big old sheet of paper. It was probably 4 or 5 feet long, and I'd weighted down the ends and threw a whole bunch of paint on it that wasn't the colors I was working on for my commission that had to match the woman's sofa. You know how that is. And I accidentally kicked the box of cat litter that was stored in the garage by where I had laid out the painting. And of course, cat litter leaks out of all the corners of the box that it comes in. And some of it fell on the paper and it made this nice effect. So I started using it on the Yupo paper. You can't use salt and get that salty effect that you get with salt in watercolor on watercolor paper, but you can use cat litter. So it's a real fun kind of thing to use for foliage and different texturing. Okay, I'm gonna put this away. I'll show you another one that I use similar. This is you're not gonna be able to see this one either, but I as well because it's big. But I call this one the cauliflower nebula. But this is I used cat litter and string laid on the paper. And this one is very loose cat litter just to create texture. Here. I did this one for another demo at another art club. So it's very loose. But these little dark spots where the cat litter concentrates, it pulls the water out, it concentrates the color, and it also clears the color off the Yupo paper. It does both things, some of both things. You can never predict whether it's going to concentrate the watercolor or it's going to clear it all the way. You don't want to, cat litter is also clumping. The cat litter I use is clumping cat litter. You don't want it to clump a lot. All it does is clear everything off the Yupo paper when you get a big clump. Okay, let me show you how to do this. Are there any questions so far? All right, I'm going to use my palette colors now so that you can see them. Let me move my palette over a little so you can get more of the paper on here. The tripod I usually use to hold my iPad died, and so I'm using a rigged tripod that I don't usually use, and it's taking up more space than I would like it to. So all I'm doing is putting water on my paper. The other thing about Yupo is if you get too much color or too much water on your paper, all you have to do is hold it up and let it drip off. It will drip right off and you can get rid of it. That didn't drip too much, so that makes me think I don't have too much water. I like to make up some color before I put it on. I don't know, I think I'll use this, some of these rosy and purple colors over here. I want some darkness, so I think I'll put some darkness up here. Now, in watercolors, most of you probably know, dries about 30% lighter than what you see when you put it on, and the liquid watercolors are much more intense than the watercolors that you get from your palette. It's just a lot more intense. Oh, just a lot. Some darkness down here too. I'll pull this up so you can see the whole thing in a minute. I'll make this kind of earth colors in here. Spatter a little with everything everywhere. I don't know, but as a pastelist, one of the things I was taught was to use all the colors everywhere in the picture so that it becomes more unified. That if you just put all the greens here and all the blues here and all the yellows here, then you've got patches of color. But if you kind of have a little bit of yellow and a little bit of green in your sky and a little bit of blue and a little bit of green, you know, in your lake, and a little bit of red in your trees and in your sky and your lake, then the whole painting draws together as a whole, rather than it being sectioned off into sections of color. You want your painting to be unified rather than separated by color, or to be sectioned off. If you look at children's paintings, they think of, if they've been taught that skies are blue, and if they've been taught these things, then often their sky will be blue and their grass will be bright green, and you know the ground will be dark brown, and it'll look like bands and blobs of color instead of, and it'll hit you that that's what they're doing. And usually that happens when kids are told that's what's happening. Now, I don't want to get too much more color on this. Ideally, I would probably like a couple more colors in here, but not necessarily right now. I'm going to try to push some of this up so you can see the bottom of the paint a little bit better. Okay, now I want to get some string. And I want to get some I want to use the string to make some outlines, actually kind of draw with it. So I think, and I have some things that I have been wanting to use, some little objects I've been wanting to use, and I'm going to use in here. I don't want these to stop in the middle though, because that's what's happening. I want them to go, I want to have a
Julia, there is a question.
Sure.
The question is your paint fresh and wet or has it dried?
Oh, this is wet. This is, you're asking right now whether this is wet or
Mhm.
dry?
Yeah,
It's definitely wet.
okay. And how long it dries usually?
It depends on how much water's on there, just like any
Okay.
watercolor painting. With the litter and the pieces of thing, like this string will soak up the water. You have to wait till it dries too. So it takes a little bit longer. You know, probably. And actually, once the paint is kind of partially dry, you can take it off, the stuff off, and it won't lose the imprint. But I don't want this to be that straight. Excuse me while I'm talking while I answer. I'm thinking while I answer. It usually won't lose its shape, but sometimes it will. So it's better to wait till it's probably almost completely dry. And I'd say depends on what material you've put on it. But you know, sometimes I'll let things that have cat litter on them dry overnight. Sometimes I'll let them dry a couple hours. Depends on the day and how. It doesn't take that much longer though. I mean, really, if it's a regular warm day and stuff like that. Now I'm gonna
Thank you.
make this a regular California day is what I'm saying. North Carolina, that's what you're hearing in my voice. I meant to tell you that North Carolina. It's what you're hearing in my voice. That's where I grew up. People always ask that. If it's in North Carolina, it takes a little longer because it's a lot more humid there. Let me get
What about the paints in your palette? Do you squeeze fresh from the tube each time or
not
re-wet?
necessarily, no. I have some fresh paints today just because I was out, and I don't necessarily use fresh paints every time. No. I love it when I have them in there. That's just sort of fun, but I find that they do fine if they're not totally fresh. I know people have different opinions about that. I think they do fine if they're not totally fresh. Now you can also, I'm trying to create a little bit, a few hills and things. You can also create hills with just shapes like this, which it also works pretty well. I'm just cutting up. This is some leftover mat board I have. You can do it with Coca-Cola boxes or whatever you have around, right? I would normally not let that be so square on the bottom. In fact, I think it just doesn't look very, looks like a, looks
I'm
like
not,
Go
I'm not
ahead.
sure how much of your paper is off to the left, but just so that you know, we can only see a little ways. There we go.
Sorry about that.
And it's off.
I tried this and I had the full paper. I'm not quite understanding. You see how I've got this
Yeah,
on my
tripods are
board.
always a
I've
pain.
got my own, I've got this pasted on my board, so I thought you could even see the bottom of it. So I'm kind of miffed about that because I tried this out and so that you can see the whole thing. I'm not quite sure why you can't see the bottom, but I'm a little bit afraid to take the to push it up because that I would have to move the tripod, and I don't want to do that because I don't know what'll happen if I move the tripod. It's a little
We can see most of it.
okay. I tried this yesterday and I had it so you could see the whole thing, and I don't know if I moved. Maybe somebody came through and hit the table or something. But using these things to create shapes is one of the things I do. The reason I put the string on here, I would normally make these hills all with pieces of plastic or whatever I have that I could cut up. I would normally make the hills that way and not use the string to outline them. But I wanted to show you that you can use something like string to sort of dam color up. So if I wanted to make it a little warmer on the outside of this string, I don't know why I picked up the spray bottles. Let me use my palette. I moved my palette over here, so I got confused. So if I wanted to add some color outside here. So watercolor painting is about it's about water management, right? Where you put your paintbrush puts the paint on the paper and puts the water on the paper, and the water controls where the paint goes, right? So you have to, there's a lot about water management when you're using watercolors, a lot about water management and your paintbrush. So now this is going to probably merge some, but you can use this string and different objects to control where the paint goes, right? Now I have a box of rocks here, and that is because when you use things like mat board, see, can you see this end of this one curl? You probably can't see it very well, but it's curling up. So I'm going to drop rocks on it to hold it down. You can also use rocks to make texture with no stuff, but dropping rocks on it holds it down, so it will make its imprint. This end is curling up also. It's rocks, quarters, they're pretty heavy, but that keeps these from curling up when you use paper products to make shapes. Manila folders are great for cutting up. Old manila folders, they make great things to cut up. Now, I don't want this to really be green. That's just not exciting to me. So, yay. It's Yupo. Let's get you back up where you were. All I have to do is wipe it off. In fact, I could take this whole piece of paper if I'm not happy with this painting. I just wash the whole piece of paper off, right? It'll come right off. Even if it's dry, if I haven't sealed it, all the paint will come right off. And I can start all over again. So you get infinite do-overs with Yupo. It's better than baseball. And when you're a kid and something goes wrong, or somebody doesn't see what the play is, and you're on the playground and you say do-over. That's what this reminds me of. But so I can drop whatever color I want to in here. Now, back in here. If I want to make this a road, I can make it more road colors. I can make a nice little string, whatever I want to do. But I also want to make it darker. I want to make this darker too. It's not quite dark enough for me. And if this dries while I'm doing this, all I have to do is paint water, spray water on it, activate it all, so it'll flow back into each other and stuff. I don't have to worry about that. This is dry over here. If I spray water on it down here where it's dry, which you can't see, but if I spray water on this, it activates it back up. I can mush around in it again if I want to. So Yupo, you can reactivate all the papers. Now I have now I want to show you what the cat litter does, which I've knocked off over here. It's a little wet for cat litter up in here, but down in here, it's great. I want to make some foliage, some kind of funny little trees growing up in here. I can. Over here. Some trees growing, there's some trees going down in here. You're just. Over here where it's dry, it's not going to do anything. This area is dry. It's not going to pick up anything. But up here where it's wet, it will.
Julia, why don't you want to put the cat litter on when it's very wet?
It will clump into big clumps. See how this is clumping? This was wetter down here. See that little clump, this little brown thing right here, this little thing right here? That's a clump of cat litter. It pulled together and it made a big clump. Over here, where it's very wet, made a clump. You
Got
do
it.
here. Lift this up because it doesn't really matter where this works, and I'll lift this up higher so you can see it better. But this is a clump of cat litter here, but this is it clumped here. It clumped here. If I make a big clump, when I take it off, it's just gonna have white under it. These little clumps will probably be interesting. But if it pulls together into a big clump, like this clump here is larger, it actually has height. It's about 1/4 of an inch high. When I pull that off, there's nothing gonna be under there much but white. So you don't big, huge clumps of it.
After you put it on there, if you then let it dry a little bit, but saturate it with a new color, which will it not be able to absorb that color? So that might fill in some of the spaces where it soaked up color.
Yes, if it's dry.
Does that make sense?
Yes, if it's already absorbed a lot of color, yes, and I do that sometimes. And I do add other colors and do add other colors around it. And yes, it does that. But it also, often the cat litter will absorb up a little of the color that you put over it. But it does exactly that. You can fill in color around it. And if I want more color, like if I want more of this same color, I actually don't know whether it's the same color. No, it couldn't be because that's my spray paint. I don't put my brush back into that. I'll spray some color around it. I try not to put my brush back into the cat litter. If I've got cat litter on there and I want to add more color, you can add more color after you've added cat litter, and the color there's a limit to the amount of cat color and paint that the cat litter will absorb. Once it gets this dark color like this, it's not going to absorb anymore. So you can add the same color you had there, but you have to add it with the spray. I would not add it with my brush. It just is just not something I would add with my brush, because it's hard. It's a little bit difficult to clean your brush. So now this is not exactly what I was looking for, but it doesn't matter. And I had, let me find my little guys. Oh, they fell off. I see where they are. Cat must have walked through here. This isn't quite far off enough, but I've been wanting to use these. I had 5 of them, but I can't find the other one right now. These are the little clips off of plastic bags of bread and stuff. And I've been wanting to use them to kind of imprint. I don't know if this one I better turn over. Probably the way it's warped. But I've been wanting to kind of use them to imprint some little bit of make them little houses. Want to see what I just want to experiment with that shape. Now, my guess is that this will be not as interesting as I want it to be when it dries, because I have not. This isn't weighted down enough, and I mainly did this to show you how you can dam things up and move things around and use the cat litter. However, it might be really interesting. I have no idea. So, but I want to put some more purple in it because I don't have enough. It's all my purple's all down in this one corner, and I want to put some more purple around because it's going to look weird. If it does look good, it's going to need some more in other places. I'm just going to splatter it a little, and that'll that won't end up like that. It'll, as you well know, if you work with a watercolor, it will fade out. So I'll have to see what that looks like when I finish it. Are there any more questions about cat litter or weighting things or using objects to delineate color areas or anything like that? Nope, I can't. Let's this way.
Julia, how, if you get cat litter in your brush, how would you get it out? Or is
Water.
it? Okay,
Water, just water. Even if it's dry, you can just put water in it.
so
It'll
do you
get
have to soak the brush?
Nope, you just wash it out. You know, I don't know. Do you have cats?
No,
Okay, when you wash out a litter box, it's got cat litter stuck all over it. You can use water and it just goes right out.
okay.
You don't have to worry about it. Water will get it right out. But I just don't like to get it in my brush. I just prefer not to. So, all right. Now, the other thing I did that's interesting. I wish I had found. Oh, I do. I'll show you a found object painting a little, but okay. The other thing that I do is layer things with Cline spray. And let me show you some differences in how you make how you can make different textures with Yupo and these spray bottles and Cline. All right, this is just a piece of paper that I use my spray bottle. I sprayed it with let me see what the sequence. I want to make sure I get the sequence of colors right. I use magenta, and then I know this is the right one. I use magenta, I'll let it air dry, and then yellow and let it air dry, and then blue and let it air dry. So when you let things air dry, of course, it gives the paint a longer time to spread out on the paper. So the droplets get closer together, right? So there's more of a chance for them to mix. And you can see this haze underneath the speckles. See these hazy spots? Right here, it's very soft. You can't see it so much there's a very soft place, but I also added water, alcohol here. So it's really hazy, really spotty and soft. I sprayed alcohol in it too. So that even spread it out more. But just letting it air dry, the water spreads out and takes the colors closer together, and you're more likely to get a little cloudy, soft cloud underneath your speckles. This one I did the same magenta, yellow, and then blue, but I left I blew dry between the layers. Same amount of paint, same 3 colors in the same sequence, But you can see this is hazy because I let it air dry between layers. And this I blew dry between layers, so the speckles stayed farther apart and they didn't mix, and you don't get that hazy cloud. So if you want tiny speckles that look more like a bird's egg, really sharp speckles, then you need to blow dry them quickly so that there's more space between the dots and they don't fade together. If you want this faded hazy look, let them air dry between the layers. Now, this third one, air dry, blow dry. This is Cline between the layers. I put magenta down. I let it, I dried it. And then I put Cline spray on it. And then I put yellow down, let it dry. I think I blew it dry. Then I put, because I was in a hurry. Then I put Cline spray on it. And then I put the blue on top and Cline sprayed it. But you can see that the colors are brighter because they don't mix. You can see more of the colors. Now, interestingly, it looks like to me that the yellow bled through a lot because you get a lot of green and turquoise color from the blue and the yellow mixing. You didn't get the magenta didn't bleed through as much. It looks very magenta. It's very interesting to me, that bleeding through pattern. So because of that, I did the Cline between layers, and I did yellow first, magenta second, and blue was the sealer, blue last. And when I did that, the blue stayed bluer. This area, this one is much bluer. It's still the yellow bled through and mixed over here, but here it stayed real blue. Part of the problem was the Cline I was using was at its end and it wasn't spraying very evenly. So there may have been some spaces that were not sprayed very well, but I think the yellow leaks through more than any of the other colors. I don't know why that is. But I think it's interesting that if you seal them, they're much brighter and they stay truer to their colors. And also the drying time makes a difference in what kind of texture you get on this Yupo paper.
When you blow dry it, though, you have to be really careful, right? Because the Yupo can buckle and.
The Yupo will not buckle because it's plastic. It doesn't. You have to be careful of not moving the watercolor with the force of the blow dryer. You have to come up here, overhead 3-4 feet and blow dry. You can't blow down dry right here. You'll blow the watercolor all over the paper. You have to blow from afar and take more time to do it when you blow dry. The paper won't buckle. If you were to do it really hot, really close, maybe it would, but you'd have to have a really hot blow dryer. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
You're not going to melt the paper is what you're going to.
Well, that's what I was afraid of because that's what I heard. But
I've never melted any Yupo paper using a blow dryer, but it could vary from blow dryer to blow dryer and how close you hold it to it and all that stuff. And I have used blow dryers to force the color in different, you can use the blow dryer to blow the color around on the Yupo paper. That was a good question. That was a very good question. So I did this, and I really think that the yellow bleeds through more because this really got very turquoise. I just did this because I thought maybe I had forgotten to seal between the layers and I didn't. And you can see that got very turquoise. I don't know why that would be. You can also okay, this is turquoise paint sprayed into wet sealer. And you can see it dribbles a little and it also just spots a lot, and the speckles are larger. And this is sealer sprayed into wet turquoise paint. So you get different, you can also do different things that way. It's just experimenting, and it depends on what effect you want.
That's a beautiful texture.
Isn't it fun? It's
Yeah.
really fun. Yeah. I mean, if you were doing a turtle shell or something, these little spots are, if you're doing the side of a dragon, this would look great. I mean, it would just be beautiful. Okay, so these are the kind of things that you can do when you play around. You just, you waste a little paper, maybe not. So, you get a good effect, you frame it. Now, what I normally do is I cover a sheet with some color, I seal it, and then I wash it off so that some of the color comes off and some of it stays behind. So this is what happens when you do that. See if I can get this thing where you can see it fairly well. If it wasn't matted, this one no. So you can see in here is the shadow of a layer that I washed off. It partially stays on because I've sealed it, right? You can see little spots here that are the layers. I think this has 3 or 4 layers on it. I started with orange and yellow. I added blues. And then the last one was blue and a black. It's called black, but it really looks like an indigo. So in this corner, it's very blue. But you can see the shadiness, the shades as they layer up. You get some really pretty effects with this. And this is another one. Hopefully you can see all of this one because it's smaller. Oh, I'm getting really upset with this setup. But anyway, you can see most of it. You can see the top here where this is something that was sprayed on first, right? It all came out. This all stayed on. This is only 2 layers. This is the first layer I added. Then I put this watercolor on top. So I think this looks like the road to Mordor or something. But anyway, you get some really pretty effects when you do this. This one is where I use found objects and layering. So I used all circles in this, right? So I put down the big circles there. I can't remember what kind of lids or whatever I used for them. And then I sealed it, and then I washed it off, and then I put down more, and I put down some more circles, and then I sealed it and washed it off. And then I put down another layer of circles. I think the last layer were very small circles, but you can see how the layers build up. They leave shadows. And then I think I went back and I added some color to the circles just to give it a little bit of more, a little bit more interest. But the layering really, it's fun when you have shadows of shapes of the found objects, and also when you have shadows of what was there before. And you have little peeks out of color. You can't see so well here, but there's some odd green goals peeking out behind here. There's some odd green goals coming out here. There's some purples coming out in here of other layers. It's pretty
Well,
fun.
Julia, how can some of the paint wash off if you've already sprayed it with the Cline?
Because you're spraying it. I spray it with the sprayer in the kitchen. It just kind of knocks it off.
So it's not even, it's not completely sprayed, like some areas may not have as much spray as others.
It's sprayed. I spray it pretty evenly. It's sprayed pretty evenly. I guess I do know that the thicker the watercolor is, the easier it comes off. I've noticed that. I guess it's because there's a bigger, when it gets agitated, it slips around more. That's my guess.
Hmm.
It just, because you got that watercolor layer that doesn't really stick to the, it doesn't really stick to the plastic beneath it or the Cryline above it. It's just, so when you get this beading on it, it's doing this. And the Cryline isn't strong, right? It's not a strong plastic or anything, and it's not very thick, so it breaks up.
Hmm.
So that's what I'm kind of thinking. It's the agitation that breaks it up.
Okay, thank you.
So let me, in fact, if I can get around, I've got a pile of things here so that I can. And I don't usually do this way, but I'm going to try it. Let's pull this as far as I can. That was first. This piece has been sprayed, okay? Now, the first thing I'm gonna do is try to, this is not very forceful, but see, even though I've sprayed this twice, but the watercolor is still coming off of it.
Hmm.
And if I get in here close with the sprayer, it's knocking some of it out. See where that was really dark, now it's got holes in it. Now, if I sink it in here, some of the watercolor come off too, I suspect. But you can see in here where that light line's starting to develop.
Uh,
And you can also see where it's darker, that's coming off more than where it's lighter. This light area is kind of remaining the same, and this darker area is breaking up a lot. Now let me push it down here. Wish I had a camera with a zoom for my zooms. That would really be good because I could you sit there, okay. I could show you. I don't know whether you can see. Can you guys see how nicely speckled that is?
yeah.
Isn't that cool?
Yep.
So that's what happens. And then I could put some paint over this. And this, which is just the force of this little sprayer, it's not the force of the but it does create neat effects. So now I have this almost, I have this shape here that's all speckledy in this more smooth area here and this more smooth area here. And I could probably really do something with that. Even though before it didn't look like much at all, and it wasn't very interesting to me. The way that the blue laid down on this paper was not very interesting to me. But now that it has that odd speckly shape and in this soft blue, and this is a dark indigo speckles, and this is a soft cerulean kind of blue or phthalo. You know, that looks kind of interesting to me. Now I've got to put this somewhere else that it's not going to hurt anything. That all right, now let me put him over here. Let me get this water out of my way. I'll be right. I'll show you. Do this back in here. Hit the spray bottle. I can. Let's see what. Let me show you what happens if I put something on this one. Since you just saw me knock it off. Now I could put a complementary color on it. Right. But, some from the opposite, orange is opposite. But I thought that had a lid on it and I just pulled the spray off of it. This color up here. Okay, so what I will do is let that dry. And then probably spray over it and see what it looks like, and then wash some of it off. So, and I can, if I want to, move it around to let it slide. Look, see how this is not, when you put Yupo on, when you put watercolor on regular Yupo that hasn't been sprayed with Cline. Let me find my piece that I guess flew down there. Hang on, I've got another piece over here. I want to show you this because I didn't plan this, but I think it's very interesting. You see, when I moved this, it didn't move much on the Cline, right? When those of you who pour watercolor and watch it slide around on paper, this isn't moving much, but that's because of the Cline, not because of the Yupo. Let's put some water on here. Wait, so knock that over. I'm just gonna do this in the center of the piece. I'm putting water on here. If I put purple on here, wait a minute, I think I put too much water. If I put purple on here, I put wet like that was. My husband ran over this piece of paper with the car. The spot's got that mark on it. It was hilarious. It was my fault. It's not his fault. He couldn't see it was there. But see how much easier it is to run the colors together. If I keep moving this around, there's some effect because the car ran over the paper. But if I keep moving this around, I can get this thing to be a completely covered sheet of Yupo color of color. I don't have to have any holes in it. But with that Cline stuff on top of it, it will never be this. It will never get smooth. It just won't. It will never get these smooth spots, and it won't come all together like this. Eventually, I can keep rolling it till it's very, very smooth. See how much smoother it's getting more quickly. And just, again, the Cline, it just won't do that. We'll not do that as well. I've got stuff on here and it just, I remember I had this dipped in water. So the sheet is very damp. It just won't do that. Won't do the same thing that on the Cline. The Cline, it just doesn't. So I think that's just an interesting thing too about the difference between the Cline surface and the Yupo surface. Anyway, sometimes I make a mess, but that's okay. Now I have this one that I think is a little bit too bright and gaudy. So I would love to put some darker color on it and let these other colors show through, right? instead of just being prominent, I'd like to let them show through so that they're part of the intrigue instead of a huge message. I'd like them to be more coming slowly, it's coming at us through the stuff. This is what I would do to that. And you could see that orange and that green were so bright. They were definitely the liquid watercolors. My palette colors would not have been that harsh, right? They would have been a lot softer. So what I would do is I'd probably turn all these down. And I'm adding a lot, so it really covers it. That other one I didn't. But in order to cover it all, so that I can break it up on top of it, I'm having to put a lot of color on here, right? Because it won't slide around and come together like on the Cline the way it will on the Yupo paper. I would not put this much color on the Yupo by itself. And I can also put this alcohol on it and make it come together more slowly. And this will make it soften the pieces together. I would put this aside. But I would, like I said, I wouldn't put this much color. I wouldn't need to put it on the Yupo itself. But with the Cline sprayed on there, in order to get full coverage, I have to put more paint on. I did want to show you what it's like to spray things on, what alcohol looks like and what water looks like when you spatter something that's already been painted. And I can show you what happens when, I don't know whether you can see this or not, but can you see this paw print right here?
Sorry.
This is where he slid right here when he got into a wet spot. He walked across here, and then there were nice little paw prints all over my floor. Another way that you can get color to spray is some of your used tubes. You can put them in water and then you can put this in your spray bottle, but you have to make sure that it's very well mixed, because if you don't, little tiny pieces of paint will get into the sprayer and clog it up and you'll get so frustrated. But I want to show you what water does when you spray here on dry paint. It makes little holes in the paint. And what alcohol does on dry paint. Let me get the darker side up here. You can see it. Just makes a little tiny bit of texture. I don't know if you can see it. It's a real tiny bit of texture. Let me get that. Oh, it's shining, isn't it? Oh, it's wet. Glistens, of course. But it's starting to open up little holes in here. Right in here, it's starting to open up little holes. Can you see that at all? In this little area right here.
Yes.
See it? How it opens up those nice little holes. This is really fun. And then
Julia, and that's alcohol on the.
that was water. That's just water. Wait a minute. Yeah, that was water. Now let me find the alcohol. That's just water. That's water too. The alcohol is, I had a workshop with a bunch of with the Sunnyvale Art Club. Yeah, that's just water. That's still just water. Still just water. And I labeled all my bottles with lots of words all over them. But I couldn't find, after we packed up, I couldn't find my bottles of alcohol. So it takes me a while to, that's what the alcohol does. Can you see how that's opening up little holes? That's what the alcohol does. It does it a little faster. And they're a little I don't know. They're
Brighter?
similar, but they're a little bit bigger.
Mhm.
What was your word? Well, somebody made a comment. I didn't hear it. I couldn't
Oh,
hear-
no, no, no. I just say it's bright. It looks brighter than water.
Yeah, they're
Mm.
bigger, so there's more space and they lighten it faster. So yes, it does look brighter.
And I have couple more questions in Messenger.
Go ahead.
So the question is liquid watercolor in the spray. Did you purchase it or prepare it by yourself? You mixed
The
it.
spray bottles, all
Yeah.
that I've been using tonight are the purchased liquid watercolors. I have made it myself, and I do have bottles with it that I've made it out of the remnants from my emptied out tubes of watercolor. I like to use those a lot, but I don't like to use them during demos because if they get stuck, I spend a lot of time cleaning out the spray. And I don't want to do that during a demo because nothing comes out and then so that's why I'm not using them right now. But that's why I said when you do this, when you put your tube that's almost nearly empty in, because there's still a lot of watercolor in there when you can't squeeze it out. If you cut it up and you put it in a jar or something to make water to put in one of your sprayers, make sure you agitate it a lot and that you're not you're getting all things that are dissolved and not little suspended pieces, because you'll clog your sprayer. So tonight I'm just using the ones that are liquid that won't clog my sprayers for your benefit. So I won't be doing that.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one more question. Can a photograph be printed on Yupa paper?
Can a photograph be printed
Yeah,
on the paper?
on this paper.
I have no idea. That I don't know. You'd have to Google that.
Because
That-
it looked like photo paper. It's like the same glossy.
Yeah, I think that'd be a little hard because
Anything possible, you have to find the source.
right. Yeah, you have to go.
You have to find the source, yeah.
Yeah, you have to find the source and you have to it would have to be some kind of ink that dried pretty quickly. Because it would tend to, if it didn't dry quickly, it would tend to slide around on the paper, I would think.
Oh, I see.
The drying would be the problem, I would think,
Yeah.
would be a problem to solve.
So Julia, your first two paintings you did, are they dry yet?
Let's see. Doesn't look like it, but I can
Oh.
pick up some stuff off the very first one. I have one more thing I can show you, but I don't know how much. I'm looking at 2:30 already, so I don't know if you want me to do that or not. I can pick some things up off here to show you what. It might be best if I got instead of trying to pick them up with my fingers right now since it's so wet. Probably be better if I got somebody to put them out here. I'm gonna have something here because I just saw it yesterday. Yep, there you go. That's what I. Okay. Might be better if I pick them up with this. All right, this one is off camera, but that gave me a chance to try it. Okay. All right. I told you that these guys rolled when I put it down, but it's kind of an interesting look. So I'm not going to worry about it. If I start trying to pick these up with my fingers, I'm going to mess up their imprint even worse. Then, especially when it's still wet. See, I've already messed it up. See, I fiddled around with my fingers. So yeah, pick this one up better. See, that would be dry. It's probably going to spread out, but it would dry on a bunch of little dots. That's going to dry in a line. I'm drawing a line. It's really too early to pick these up, but this one I should have waited with weighted, not WEIGHTED, not, it would have made a much better impression if I had weighted it with rocks. Let's see if any of these are. Usually I just pick these up with my fingers, but it's so wet. See this is what happens when you pick it up and it's way too wet. You lose the whole imprint. So I didn't get my S here that I made out of that. And this one I messed up. This is actually a piece of string that fell on here. Is probably gonna. So it's not as successful as I'd like, but you can get an idea how it looks like a kind of post-industrial wagon wheel that's falling apart. Anyway. And as always, let's see. Things look better when you throw them out around. They always look better when you throw them around, right? I would probably confine that one to more like this. Right. Things always look more intentional when you put a mat around them. So it's very abstract and not quite dry, so it didn't imprint quite as well as I wanted to, but you can see, and it really does need the darkness or it wouldn't look like anything at all. You can see why it's important to have value change in your paintings, right? It's very important to have the value change. It's very important to have a center of interest. Right. The other one I don't think is dry, but I'm going to try it, see what it looks like. Looks like it has volcanic hills in it. Okay. Get these guys out of the way first. Some of these would slid around when I see the. Can you see the texture that piece of paper left up there? I don't know whether you can see that texture. It's interesting in itself. So you get different effects when you use different things to put down on the paper. Now, normally I would take the glitter off. I'm not going to be able to take all of it off. These aren't anywhere near dry enough, so they're little imprints. I'm going to show very well. However, where did my, oh, here's a, what I can do. See if they show up any better when I do that. Yep, they do. So I thought. Okay. So now I can knock off some of this. When you knock off this yeah, it's not, yeah. When you knock off the cat litter before it's dry, you get smeary stuff. You get smears, so I can't knock this cat litter off yet, unfortunately. You don't get the little, can you see what happens when I knock? This is actually a good thing to do anyway in itself. If I start knocking this cat litter off when it's wet, look what happens. See all these little smeary streaks I get? I get little comet streaks. Which, you know, if you want that effect, it's not bad, but see how that's streaking? If I want the little speckles, I have to wait till it's dry. But you know, if you want the streaks, that's a different thing. Where are those streaks? So that's why you have to wait till it's dry. I could put my blow dryer on it, but now those three worked. Down here, in this little spot, those dried. That there's no longer any cat litter on that little constellation right there. So, but this thing itself is too wet to take the right in there might be. Nope, streaking. Okay, any more questions? I think is it about time to stop, or do you want me to show you real quickly how to do one more thing? What's the verdict?
We have time yet. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Please, yeah.
Okay, I have one more, there's one more thing I do that I can show you. And it's kind of a neat thing. Let's see if I can get this up here. Okay, I'm not going to do the show you how to do the background. I'm going to show you how to do I've already prepared a background. Normally I would just throw some. This is upside down. I would throw some paint on a paper where I want it. Let me get my, oh yeah. You're just gonna have to believe. Oh, there it is. This is the picture I'm gonna work on. He actually goes this way. He's upside down. So there's light coming in from this side. I had that right to begin with. There's light coming in from this side. He's lying upside down on the sofa, this cat. All right. This is my drawing of it, and I printed it out larger and darker. First thing I'm going to do is this. Settle down here. Oh, I just spilled stuff all over the table. Hang on. I am looking for my tape, which I put down right over here. All right, hang on. I'll just do it without tape. It won't matter. I can do it without tape. All right, so I've been working on top of my light box. So I've got this picture under here. I'll put him right in here, and I've kind of got the paint distributed with the light coming in from over here and the darks here where he is lying. And what the first thing I want to do is take some of this water. I'd really rather have, okay. I'm going to activate the paint on here inside where he is, right? Because this is my drawing and I'm just going to do this kitty. So you're going to lift some of the paint off and use some of the paint that's there to paint this little kitty on top of a light box. Or first thing I'm going to do is just kind of get his outline done, because that'll tell me where to paint. And And that's this little paw coming in there. I see what that is. I just want to get his little outline done first, and then sometimes I take off all the paint, add colors back in, and sometimes I use the colors that are there. Just depends on how well my colors worked when I put them on the paper. A little bit hard to see the drawing right there, and I may have gone outside. It doesn't matter, because the UPO I can activate it and move it around and put it anywhere I want it. I'll look under here a minute. Yeah, I activated outside the lining. This part is not him, but that's okay. I'm having trouble seeing him. That's him. Okay. So over here, I'm going to take it off where he is. Yeah. So I can see the line. Yep, there you go. I'm just completely lift it here so I can see where the line is, where he is. Because you can activate it and move the paint around, you can just I'm going to lift a lot of him and then turn the light off so you can see what I'm doing. This is our cat Forby. He was the fourth kitten from the second litter that one of a feral cat had in our backyard. She was really wily and we couldn't train her on the trap to get her fixed. And so she had a second litter. So his name is Four because he was fourth kitten, and B from the second litter, litter B. So Forby was his name. He was a great cat. He was the happiest cat in the world. The front door blew open one time and we don't let our cats outside because of coyotes and stuff, and we don't want them to eat the birds and things. And I woke up and Forby was going like, close the front door, please. I don't ever want to go back out there again. Because when our front door blew open one night, several of the other cats went outside, but Forby didn't. He knew better. You can just blot it off. But now, turn the light and see if you can see that I'm lifting off his shape, right? When I turn off the light, you can see basically you even take this big brush. That's the green in it. Sorry, I don't want a green cat, but weird as it seems, that's his little foreshortened shape. It's always odd to me after you lift off what the shape really looks like in the drawing, because he's really foreshortened and you don't think about what you're seeing. Just blot up some of this to make it faster. Yep. All right, so I've got his shape out, and now I can start adding his colors back in. Because I've got my drawing right under here. I can see exactly. Where to put them. Yeah. I keep thinking my water pan is right where the cat litter is sitting, and I keep almost sticking my brush into the cat litter instead of the water pan. It's bad. This litter's, we think this litter's dad was a Maine Coon, and Corby was so furry. His paws were so furry, he would look twice before he got up on the top of anything, because he would slide around so much. And when we took him to the vet, that was still when they have those ear thermometers now for cats too. But this was when they still stuck stuff up their anus, and one of the vet techs couldn't find his anus. He looked and looked, and it was just so furry back there. Maine Coons are really furry because and Forby was tiny cat. He got the fur and all that stuff, but he didn't get any of the size of Maine Coon. His brother got the size, but he just got this whole thing kind of tan in here. Warby did not get the size, but he got all the other characteristics. He's really sweet, and he kind of beeped all the time instead of having a big loud purr. He'd go beep, beep. Maine Coons make really funny beepy noises sometimes. And he was also our exercise cat. He would go around and get all the others to play with him at night. They all gained weight after he died, because he was the one who got them all to play. All right. Yeah, let's go in. It's a little bit fast to do this on Yupo because you have to kind of wait sometimes for things to dry so they don't flood together. But on top of this light box, it's a little bit easier because it does at least dry. That's going to be a little sketchy, but picture of my husband and the cat, and that was in the paper and on your website, and that I did that this way. And I have to go in and add some shadows and stuff too in here that I'm not going to be able to do. And he has some tabby cats have about 3 or 4 colors in their coat that are, light, very light color, and then the dark browns and the black and the orange stuff. I'd have to go back and several times to get a tabby cat's coat right. You have to go back in several times to paint what's there. At least I do. That's how I do it. Other people can probably do it immediately. I'm pretty slow at painting cats. And then sometimes I get color in here and I'll go back and take some of it out, right? Because the lighter spots he has are probably, if things flow together, then I'll just come in and I'll take out the white parts between his stripes and stuff like that. That's easier than on Yupo. That's easier to do than it is to actually leave them like you do on watercolor paper. At least I find that's easier to go in and put the color in, and then lift it is easier on Yupo paper than my picture before we walked away. I'll just try to do as much as I can. And like his whiskers and stuff, that's of course the very last thing you do.
So basically here you're doing kind of like classical painting. I mean,
But my drawing's right under me, so I don't have to, it makes it really simple. Yeah,
looks
much
cool.
more like classical painting, but my drawing's right under me, so it's really a big difference. Because once you wipe it out, you just do regular painting. It doesn't look like much now, but I'll get it down.
Yeah, it probably needs second layer.
Yeah, well, and usually what I do is go and put in all the darks, and then, like I said, lift out the lights. And it needs more dark under here to make him look like he's not floating. More dark under here.
Shadow.
And I'll probably take out some of this because the sofa comes in like this, right? So, but on Yupo, you just move it around, right? I'll just move this around.
This is so easy. I mean,
Yeah, it's just, see, that's what I'm telling you. It's very simple. And if I don't get this line, say if I don't get this line correct the first time, I just wet it and do it a second. So it makes it's very easy on Yupo. I think that's not right. When I'm looking in there, I can tell that this line probably should have gone up here. I think so. And I can wet whole sections of it, right? You wet a whole section, and you can wet. I'm doing it again out of your sight, but you can wet this whole. Like I wet this whole section right in here, and I really want that to be more yellow, right? Because he's and I positioned him probably a little far down. I probably would have wanted to position him up there, but that's okay. So I can wet this whole section and take some of this darkness out, which I don't really want there. I really want it more.
that was so beautiful.
And I put yellow in there. I can put yellow right in there. It's just, I can just change it right up. I don't have to worry about. And if I activate that yellow, then it all looks natural. It doesn't look like there's not a line. There's not You know, it'll all look natural. Once I wet it all, it'll just float around and of course I'll wet this so it'll flow in together. There won't be a line there either. So because it's Yupo. It's just amazing. So that's all. Is there any other questions or anything you want to see? And this can't change here. There's the values are wrong, right? You can see that immediately the values are wrong because you can't see them well enough.
Yeah.
Right. And this should be much darker here. So you can tell that immediately. You you need to be able to distinguish them. So, you know, that and then behind his head, there needs to be darker so you can see his head, all that stuff. Traditional painting, but with Yupo, it's so easy
It's
to,
different. Yeah, it's easy to
it's
change.
very, very different. It's a very different experience from traditional watercolor. So,
Looks amazing. I
any other
love the
questions?
spontaneity of it, and you can control it. I mean, you can change it very easily.
It's very easy. It's very forgiving, and it's fun to use. I would recommend it for all kinds of people, everybody to try it. It's also a little bit difficult to get used to at first if you're used to regular watercolor paper, because you can't. I was trying to think the difference. There's something about the way that the brush feels on watercolor paper that's real satisfying. The water soaking in and you making those nice lines, and it feels quiet, and there's something real, I don't know, this is how I feel about it. It feels quiet and it's so clean, and it stays there. It's just so pretty, and then you get to this and you have that sound. You always have that sound that you don't want that kind of sound when you're on regular watercolor, because you're probably working too hard with your brush. So it's a little bit different, and the watercolor sits real differently. It's you have to get used to a lot of things and shift gears and stuff. So that you have to be in the right mood to work with Yupo. So.
And any questions, guys?
No, thanks, Julia. Great demo.
I'm a little worried about where she stores the paper, if it can be both run over and cat litter spilled on it.
Oh, no. I store the paper in my flat file. The reason it got run over was because I had a whole bunch of pieces stuck to the back of these old campaign signs that I got at Raft, because I did a demo for Sunnyvale, and I took 20 pieces of Yupo paper for everybody to do something on, and they needed smaller pieces, and I'd done too big of pieces for them. So now I have 20 pieces of 16 by 20 Yupo that I don't know where to store, stacked on these. Now I pulled a couple pieces out and left them. I forgot I'd left them out of place, and that was why. It wasn't, like I said, and the cat litter thing was just because that piece was so huge. It was a huge piece of paper. So anyway, no, the cat litter is stored away from the Yupo. So no, the Yupo's in the flat file. Thank you for caring, though. I really appreciate that.
Thank you very much for this amazing demo. We learned a lot of new things today.
I hope.
Oh, it's totally strange and different things that I learned today. Yes.
I've used Yupo paper before, and there were still some very interesting things I had no idea about. So that was great.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Julia.
You're welcome.
Tatiana, I think we can turn off the recording.
Oh yeah, thanks for reminding.